house, when I live in a hotel, I'll get out of the car and I'll say, find the door, and he'll find the door into the hotel. He knows the word front desk, you know, where you go to sign into the hotel, and he'll go to the front desk, and then after I get a key, I'll say to him, find the elevator. Now, I was always amazed that they could find elevators because, you know, sometimes they're in a wall and, you know, you don't see them. So I asked the trainer how they know. It's the smell of the grease from the elevator, which goes to another idea, and that's how amazing their senses are. It turns out that these dogs, their ability to smell is 25,000 times better than ours. Yeah, 25,000. So, yeah, so he can smell an elevator and find it. And then I have a tag where we take some saliva from his mouth and rub it on the tag, and you can hang the tag on the door of the room. That means he can find where I live, right? Because he'll go right back to the room. Now that's all good, but I've had some interesting situations with dogs. My first dog was a golden retriever, yeah, and her name was Dinah. And Dinah was absolutely the most beautiful, 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 delicate animal. But when Dinah grew older, Dinah's eyes started to not work very well, kind of like mine. And so I had to get another guide dog. And the guide dog was Nelson. Nelson was a black lab, and Nelson's whole view of life was he didn't care about the work as much as he cared about food. And I'll tell you two great stories about Nelson. First one was, I had Nelson and I was flying on an airplane from Los Angeles to Chicago. And I got to Chicago and I said, Nelson, let's go get off the plane. And he was perfect down the long jetway. And I asked a person which way baggage claim was, where you get your bags. And he told me, and I said, Nelson forward. And Nelson went down the long hallway. And I said, find the escalator, you know, down. And he was perfect down the escalator. And I had one of those smell tags I was talking about on my bag. And I said, Nelson, find my bag. And he actually went to where all the bags come down on the baggage claim thing. And he found it. And I was so impressed. And then I said, Nelson, let's go outside. And we started walking, and there was a little boy who was sitting on a chair, and he had an ice cream cone. And Nelson was walking, and man, Nelson went by the little kid, and he went like that, and took the whole ice cream. The other thing Nelson did, I was working for a television show called Good Morning America. Do you know that's on? That's on in the mornings, right? Okay, so I was on that show all the time, and they sent me to do a story on a man named Dave Drabecky. Now, Dave Drabecky was a pitcher in the big leagues for the Giants years ago, and Dave Drabecky had to stop pitching because he developed cancer in his left arm. Well, Dave Drabecky adopted 7 children, all who had a difficult disease, all who had leukemia. And all 7 children are still here. They're all in their 30s now. He's in his 60s, and he's the leading voice for leukemia in the world. He's a special man. But we were going to do a story about how he had overcome his problem and what he was doing. And we had to go to Illinois in April to do this story. And I've got Nelson with me. And there was a snowstorm. It never should happen in April. And so instead of getting an airplane from Chicago to where Mr. Drabecky lived, we had to get a car and drive, and we didn't get there till about 3 in the morning. It was really late. And as we pulled into the motel where I was going to stay for a few hours and get some sleep, the driver that I was with said, hey, Mr. Sullivan, there's an Arby's roast beef place right at the end of the street here. Would you like a sandwich? And I said, oh, no, man, I just want to go to bed. So I got to the hotel, and I checked into my room, and I climbed into bed, and I heard, Nelson, shut up. Nelson, shut up! What do you want? And he wanted to go out. So I got up, and I had my underwear on, but all I had was a long coat, trench coat. And I thought, what I'll do is I'll open the door, and I'll let Nelson go out, and he'll pee, and then I'll call him back. But I wasn't sure where the door was, so I grabbed his collar like this, and I said, Nelson, find the door. And he went to the door, and I opened it, and he jumped, and he pulled me right through the door, and I fell in a snowdrift. Now I was in a snowdrift, and it was cold, and Nelson ran. And I went, Nelson, come here! And he wouldn't come. Nelson, come here! He wouldn't come. Nelson! Now the security guards from the hotel all come running out. Sir, you can't be yelling like that. You can't yell like that. The dog is gone. I said, I lost my C9 dog. Well, you can't yell. So they start going around all the hotel. Nelson, come here, Nelson. Come here, Nelson. No Nelson. 10 minutes later, here comes Nelson, trotting up the hill. And in his mouth, he has 2 Arby's sandwiches. And he dropped one on my foot and ate the other one. I was like, well, you want one? I'll have one. Everything. He didn't want me wandering around, and he wanted me safe. So my world was the size of that yard. But I could hear the world out here, the big world. And I wanted to be part of it, right? I wanted to be part of it. Down the street from the house where I lived, there was a baseball field, and every day I used to hear the sound of the baseball games. Sound of the kids hitting the ball popping into people's gloves, you know, as they played. And I really wanted to be part of that. My father had given me a baseball bat, but obviously I couldn't play baseball. And so I would take my radio outside and I would put on the games I lived in Boston where the Red Sox played, and I'd put their games on the radio. And as the real game would go on, I would pick up rocks from the ground and throw them up in the air and try to hit them with the bat and make believe I was playing in the big game. One afternoon, I hit the rock right at the same time that a very famous baseball player, Ted Williams, hit a home run. And I hit my rock over the fence in the yard. And I got so excited. I ran around my yard like I was running the bases. And I made believe I slid into home plate, you know, for a home run. And there was a little boy who'd been in the real game down the street. And he was on his way home from the game. And he saw me doing this, and I bet in this room all of you have either had someone be a bully toward you, or you've seen one kid be mean to another kid, and that's a horrible thing. This little boy came by the fence, and he looked at me inside the yard, and he said, "What's the matter with you, kid? Are you blind?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, that's kind of a stupid game, and I guess you're just a stupid kid." And then he started to do something really mean. He started to chant. He went, "Blindy, blindy, blindy, blindy." I picked up rocks from the ground, and every time he'd say, "Blind," I'd throw a rock at him, but he'd just move out of the way. "Blind." Eventually, he got tired of the game, and he went home, and I sat on a swing that was in my yard and cried and cried and cried. But I realized something important. Nothing in life that you really want comes easy. Everything takes effort. Everything takes work. And I believe that even when people put obstacles in your way, what was the big obstacle in my way? The fence. And blind, right? The fence. The 8-foot fence. The obstacle was in the way, and here's what I believe. And you guys, I want you to think about this on the weekend. I want you to believe it. In life, there are no fences too high. in life, there are no fences too high to climb. You've got to make a decision about it. You've got to make a decision. My friend over here already made one about being special. So what happened to me then was the most important thing. 2 little boys moved into a house that was just built right next door to my fence. Billy and Mike Hannon. And Billy Hannon, I tell this story even to adults. Billy Hannon's been my best friend for 58 years. And he moved into this house. And I used to hear him playing in his yard. And so I decided, I'm going to climb that fence and I'm going to see Billy Hannon. And I grabbed the fence and pulled myself up, hand over hand, hand over hand, hand over hand. And I got to the top of the fence and stood up there and just jumped into space. And I crashed on the ground. And the 2 little boys came running over and the wind was knocked out of me. And Billy Hannon said, wow, he said, that was a gnarly fall. He said, I'm Bill Hannon. I said, I'm Tom Sullivan and I'm blind. And he went, wow. And then he said something so beautiful. He said, want to play? That's all. Just want to play. Billy taught me to play baseball and throw a baseball and throw a football. Billy taught me to box and wrestle, but I taught Billy how to get to know all the other senses. And I taught Billy how we could sit on the ground in my mother's living room and make up movies into a tape recorder. And I taught Billy how I could read Huck Finn in Braille to him, and he could read Tom Sawyer out loud in print to me. And we could have adventures together. Billy's been my best friend forever. Everybody needs a special friend. Everybody needs a special friend. What I want you guys to do, I want everyone in this room to turn to and shake hands or hug the person that's your best friend in this room. Hurry up. You gotta hug them or shake hands with Okay. All right. Okay. Did everybody find a friend? Yeah. And you all picked out somebody, but I'll bet that most of you have a whole bunch of friends. Have a whole bunch of friends. That's what Billy became for me, a friend. And now we come to the last part of what I want to talk about today. And this has to do with an idea. I believe that if you believe that you can climb any fence, right? You can climb any fence. Then I believe that every disadvantage in life, every problem, every disadvantage in life can be turned into an advantage